May our Father, Messiah, and Holy Spirit be with us. We'll be starting off with 1 Samuel 23, and just hopefully we can finish this today. David was told the Philistines are raiding Goliath and plundering the threshing floors. David consulted our Father in heaven, shall I go and attack those Philistines? And our Father in heaven said to David, go attack the Philistines, and you will save Goliath. But David's men said to him, look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more if we go to Keilah against the forces of the Philistines? So David consulted our Father in heaven again, and our Father in heaven answered him, march down at once to Keilah, for I am going to deliver the Philistines into your hands. David and his men went to Keilah and fought against the Philistines. He drove off their cattle and inflicted a severe defeat on them. Thus David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. When Abiathar, son of Abimelech, fled to David at Keilah, he brought down an ephod with him. Saul was told that David had come to Keilah, and Saul thought, Elohim has delivered him into my hands, for he has shut himself in by entering a town with gates and bars. Saul summoned all the troops for war to go down to Keilah and besiege David and his men. When David learned that Saul was planning to harm him, he told the priest Abiathar to bring the ephod forward, and David said, O our Father in heaven, Elohim Israel, your servant has heard that Saul intends to come to Keilah and destroy the town because of me. Will the citizens of Keilah deliver me into his hands? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O our Father in heaven, Elohim Israel, tell your servant. And our Father in heaven said, he will. David continued, will the citizens of Keilah deliver me and my men into Saul's hands? And our Father in heaven answered, they will. So David and his men, about 600 in number, left Keilah at once and moved about wherever they could. And when Saul was told that David had got away from Keilah, he did not set out. David was staying in the strongholds of the wilderness of Yehudah. He stayed in the hill country, in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul searched for him constantly, but Elohim did not deliver him into his hands. David was once at Horesh in the wilderness of Ziph, when David learned that Saul had come out to seek his life. And Saul's son Jonathan came to David at Horesh and encouraged him in the name of Elohim. He said to him, do not be afraid. The hand of my father Saul will never touch you. You are going to be king over Israel, and I shall be second to you. And even my father Saul knows this too. Knows this is so. And the two of them entered into a pact before our Father in heaven. David remained at Horesh, and Jonathan went home. So the Ziphites went up to Saul and Gibeah and said, David is hiding among us in the strongholds of Horesh at the hill of Hachilah, south of Jeshimon. So if your majesty has the desire to come down, and it will be our task to deliver him into your majesty's hands. And Saul replied, may you be blessed of our Father in heaven for the compassion you have shown me. Go now and prepare further. Look around and learn what places he sets for. Go now and prepare further. Look around and learn what places he sets foot on, and who has seen him there. For I have been told he is a very cunning fellow. Look around and learn in which of all his hiding places he has been hiding. Look around and learn in which of all his hiding places he has been hiding, and return to me when you are certain. I will then go with you. And if he is in a region, I will search him out among all the clans of Yehudah. They left at once for Ziph ahead of Saul. David and his men were then in the wilderness of Moan and the Arabah to the south of Jeshimon. When Saul and his men came to search, David was told about it, and he went down to the rocky region and stayed in the wilderness of Moan. On hearing this, Saul pursued David in the wilderness of Moan. Saul was making his way along one side of a hill, and David and his men were on the other side of the hill. David was trying hard to elude Saul, and Saul and his men were trying to encircle David and his men and capture them. When the messenger came and told Saul, come quickly, for the Philistines have invaded the land, Saul gave up his pursuit of David and went to meet the Philistines. That is why that place came to be called the Rock of Separation. This is 24. David went from there and stayed in the wilderness of En-Gedi. When Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told that David was in the wilderness of En-Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 picked men from all Israel and went in search of Dawood and his men in the direction of the rocks of the wild goats. And he came to the sheepfolds along the way. There was a cave there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. Now Dawood and his men were sitting in the back of the cave. Dawood's men said to him, "This is the day of which our Father in heaven said to you, I will deliver your enemy into your hands. You can do with him as you please." Dawood went and stealthily cut off the corner of Saul's cloak. But afterward Dawood reproached himself for cutting off the corner of Saul's cloak. He said to his men, "Our Father in heaven forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, our Father in heaven's anointed, that I should raise my hand against him, for he is our Father in heaven's anointed." Dawood rebuked his men and did not permit them to attack Saul. Saul left the cave and started on his way. Then Dawood also went out of the cave and called out to Saul, "My master, king." Saul looked around, and Dawood bowed low in homage with his face to the ground. And Dawood said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the people who say Dawood is out to harm you? You can see for yourself now that our Father in heaven delivered you into my hands in the cave today. And though I was urged to kill you, I showed you pity, for I said, I will not raise a hand against my master, since he is our Father in heaven's anointed. Please, sir, take a close look at the corner of your cloak in my hand, for when I cut off the corner of your cloak, I did not kill you. You must see plainly that I have done nothing evil or rebellious, and I have never wronged you, yet you are bent on taking my life. May our Father in heaven judge between you and me, and may he take vengeance upon you for me, but my hand will never touch you. As the ancient proverb has it, wicked deeds come from wicked men. My hand will never touch you. Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom are you pursuing? A dead dog? A single flea? May our Father in heaven be arbiter, and may he judge between you and me. May he take note and uphold my cause and vindicate me against you." When Dawood finished saying these things to Saul, Saul said, "Is that your voice, my son Dawood?" And Saul broke down and wept. He said to Dawood, "You are right, not I, for you have treated me generously, but I treated you badly. Yes, you have just revealed how generously you treated me. For our Father never delivered me into your hands, and you did not kill me. If a man meets his enemy, does he let him go his way in harm? Surely our Father in heaven will reward you generously for what you have done for me this day. I know now that you will become king, and that the kingship over Israel will remain in your hands. So swear to me by our Father in heaven that you will not destroy my descendants or wipe out my name from my father's house." Dawood swore to Saul. Saul went home, and Dawood and his men went up to the strongholds. So Shemuel died, and all Israel gathered and made lament for him, and they buried him in Ramah, his home. Dawood went down to the wilderness of Paran. There was a man in Maon whose possessions were in Carmel. The man was very wealthy. He owned 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. At the time, he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. The man's name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. The woman was intelligent and beautiful, but the man, a Calebite, was a hard man and an evildoer. Dawood was in the wilderness when he heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep. Dawood dispatched 10 young men, and Dawood instructed the young men, "Go up to Carmel. When you come to Nabal, greet him in my name. Say as follows to life, greetings to you and to your household and to all that is yours. I hear that you are now doing your shearing. As you know, your shepherds have been with us. We did not harm them, and nothing of theirs was missing all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. So receive these young men graciously, for we have come on a festive occasion. Please give your servants and your son Dawood whatever you can." Dawood's young men went and delivered this message to Nabal in the name of Dawood. When they stopped speaking, Nabal answered Dawood's servants, "Who was Dawood, who was the son of Yeshai, the son of Jesse? There are many slaves nowadays who run away from their masters. Should I then take my bread and my water and the meat that I slaughtered from my own shearers and give them to men who come from I don't know where?" Thereupon Dawood's young men retreated their steps, and when they got back, they told him all this. And Dawood said to his men, "Gird on your swords." Each girded on his sword. Dawood too girded on his sword. About 400 men went up after Dawood, while 200 remained with the baggage. One of Nabal's young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, that Dawood had sent messengers from the wilderness to greet their master, and that he had spurned them. But the men had been very friendly to us. We were not harmed, nor did we miss anything. All the time that we went about with them while we were in the open. They were a wall about us both by night and by day all the time that we were with them tending the flock. So consider carefully what you should do, for harm threatens our master and all his household. He is such a nasty fellow that no one can speak to him." Abigail quickly got together 200 loaves of bread, 2 jars of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 seahs of parched corn, 100 cakes of raisin, and 200 cakes of pressed figs. She loaded them on donkeys, and she told her young men, "Go on ahead of me, and I'll follow you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal she was riding on the donkey and going down the trail on the hill when Dawood and his men appeared, coming down toward her, and she met them. Now Dawood had been saying, "It was all for nothing that I protected that fellow's possessions in the wilderness, and that nothing he owned is missing. He has paid me back evil for good. May Elohim do thus and more to the enemies of Dawood, if by the light of morning I leave a single male of his." When Abigail saw Dawood, she quickly dismounted from the donkey and threw herself face down before Dawood, bowing down to the ground. Prostrate at his feet, she pleaded, "Let the blame be mine, my master, but let your handmaid speak to you. Hear your maid's plea. Please, my master, pay no attention to that wretched fellow Nabal, for he is just what his name says. His name means boar, and he is a boar. Your handmaid did not see the young men whom my master sent. I swear, my master, as our Father in heaven lives, and as you live, our Father in heaven, who has kept you from seeking redress, by blood with your own hands. Let your enemies and all who would harm my master fare like Nabal. Here is the present which your maidservant has brought to my master. Let it be given to the young men who are the followers of my master. Please pardon your maid's boldness, for our Father in heaven will grant my master an enduring house, because my master is fighting the battles of our Father in heaven, and no wrong is ever to be found in you. And if anyone sets out to pursue you and seek your life, the life of my master will be bound up in the bundle of life in the care of our Father in heaven, but he will fling away the lives of your enemies as from the hollow of a sling. And when our Father in heaven has accomplished for my master all the good he has promised you, and has appointed you ruler of Israel, do not let this be a cause of stumbling and of faltering courage to my master, that you have shed blood needlessly, and that my master sought redress with his own hands. And when our Father in heaven has prospered, my master, remember your maid." Dawood said to Abigail, "Praised be our Father in heaven, the Elohim of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me, and blessed be your prudence, and blessed be you yourself for restraining me from seeking redress in blood by my own hands. For as sure as our Father in heaven, the Elohim of Israel lives, who has kept me from harming you, had you not come quickly to meet me, not a single male of Nabal's line would have been left by daybreak." Dawood then accepted from her what she had brought him, and he said to her, "Go up to your home safely. See, I have heeded your plea and respected your hope." When Abigail came home to Nabal, he was having a feast in his house, a feast fit for a king. Nabal was in a merry mood and very drunk, so she did not tell him anything at all until daybreak. The next morning, when Nabal had slept off the wine, his wife told him everything that had happened, and his courage died within him, and he became like a stone. About 10 days later, our Father in heaven struck Nabal, and he died. When Dawood heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Praised be our Father in heaven, who championed my cause against the insults of Nabal and held back his servant from wrongdoing. Our Father in heaven has brought Nabal's wrongdoing down on his own head." Dawood sent messengers to propose marriage to Abigail, to take her as his wife. When Dawood's servants came to Abigail at Carmel and told her that Dawood had sent them to make her his wife, she immediately bowed low with her face to the ground and said, "Your handmaid is ready to be your maidservant, to wash the feet of my master's servants." Then Abigail rose quickly and mounted a donkey, and with 5 of her maids in attendance, she followed Dawood's messengers, and she became his wife. Dawood sounds like a really cool guy. Now Dawood had taken Ahinoam of Jezreel, so both of them became his wives. Saul had given his daughter Michal, Dawood's wife, to Paltai, son of Laish from Galim. The Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah and said, "Dawood is hiding in the hill of Hakilah, facing Geshemon." Saul went down at once to the wilderness of Ziph, together with 3,000 picked men of Israel, to search for Dawood in the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul encamped on the hill of Hakilah, which faces Geshemon, by the road. When Dawood, who was then living in the wilderness, learned that Saul would come after him into the wilderness, David sent out scouts and made sure that Saul had come. David went at once to the place where Saul had encamped, and David saw the spot where Saul and his army commander, Abner, son of Ner, lay asleep. Saul lay asleep inside the barricade, and the troops were posted around him. David spoke up and asked Ahimelech the Hittite and Abishai, son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, who will go down with me into the camp to Saul, and Abishai answered, I will go down with you. So David and Abishai approached the troops by night and found Saul fast asleep inside the barricade. His spear struck in the ground at his head, and Abner and the troops sleeping around him. And Abishai said to David, Elohim has delivered your enemy into your hands today. Let me pin him to the ground with a single thrust of the spear. I will not have to strike him twice. But David said to Abishai, don't do him violence. No one can lay hands on our Father in heaven's anointed with impunity. And David went on, as our Father in heaven lives, our Father in heaven himself will strike him down, or his time will come and he will die, or he will go down to battle and perish. But our Father in heaven forbid that I should lay a hand on our Father in heaven's anointed. Just take the spear and the water jar at his head, and let's be off. So David took away the spear and the water jar at Saul's head, and they left. No one saw or knew or woke up. All remained asleep. A deep sleep from our Father in heaven had fallen upon them. David crossed over to the other side and stood afar on top of a hill. There was considerable distance between them, and David shouted to the troops and to Abner, son of Ner, Abner, aren't you going to answer? And Abner shouted back, who are you to shout at the king? And David answered, Abner, you are a man, aren't you? And there is no one like you in Israel. So why didn't you keep watch over your master, the king? For one of our troops came to do violence to your master, the king. You have not given a good account of yourself, as our Father in heaven lives. All of you deserve to die, because you did not keep watch over your master. Our Father in heaven's anointed. Look around. Where the king's spear? Where the king's spear and the water jar that were at his head? Saul recognized David's voice, and he asked, is that your voice, my son David? And David replied, it is, my master king. And he went on, but why does my master continue to pursue his servant? What have I done, and what wrong am I guilty of? Now let my master, the king, hear his servant out. If our Father in heaven has incited you against me, let him be appeased by an offering. But if it is men, may they be accursed of our Father in heaven. For they have driven me out today, so that I cannot have a share in our Father in heaven's possession, but am told, go and worship other mighty ones. Oh, let my blood not fall to the ground away from the presence of our Father in heaven. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a single flea, as if he were hunting a partridge in the hills. And Saul answered, I am in the wrong. Come back, my son David, for I will never harm you again, seeing how you have held my life precious this day. Yes, I have been a fool, and I have erred so very much. David replied, here's your majesty's spear. Let one of the young men come over and get it. And our Father in heaven will requite every man for his right conduct and loyalty for this day. Our Father in heaven delivered you into my hands, and I will not raise a hand against our Father in heaven's anointed. And just as I value your life highly this day, so may our Father in heaven value my life, and may he rescue me from all trouble. So answered David, may you be blessed, my son David. You shall achieve, and you shall prevail. David then went his way, and Saul returned home. David said to himself, someday I shall certainly perish at the hands of Saul. The best thing for me is to flee to the land of the Philistines. Saul will then give up hunting me throughout the territory of Israel, and I will escape him. So David and the 600 men with him went and crossed over to King Achish, son of Moach of Gath. And David and his men stayed with Achish and Gath, each man with his family, and David with his two wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelite, and Abigail, wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And when Saul was told that David had fled to Gath, he did not pursue him anymore. David sent to Achish, if you please, let a place be granted me. In one of the country towns where I can live. Why should your servant remain with you in the royal city? At that time, Achish granted him Ziklag. That is how Ziklag came to belong to the kings of Yehudah, as is still the case. The length of time that David lived in Philistine territory was 1 year and 4 months. David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites, the Gezerites, and the Amalekites, who were the inhabitants of the region of Olam. all the way to shore and to the land of Mitzrayim. When David attacked that region, he would leave no man or woman alive. He would take flocks, herds, donkeys, camels, and clothing. When he returned and came to Achish, Achish would ask, "Where did you raid today?" And David would reply, "The Negeb of Yehuda, or the Negeb of the Yehiramites, or the Negeb of the Canaanites." David would leave no man or woman alive to be brought to Gath, for he thought they might tell about us. David did this; such was his practice, as long as he stayed in the territory of the Philistines. Achish trusted David. He thought he has roused the wrath of his own people Israel, and so he will be my vassal forever. At that time, the Philistines mustered their forces for war to take the field against Israel. Achish said to David, "You know, of course, that you and your men must march out with my forces." David answered Achish, "You surely know what your servant would do." In that case, Achish replied to David, "I will appoint you my bodyguard for life." Now Shemuel had died, and all Israel made lament for him, and he was buried in his own town of Ramah. And Saul had forbidden recourse to ghosts and familiar spirits in the land. The Philistines mustered, and they marched to Shunem and encamped, and Saul gathered all Israel, and they encamped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the Philistine force, his heart trembled with fear. And Saul inquired of our Father in heaven, but our Father in heaven did not answer him, either by dreams or by Urim or by prophets. Then Saul said to his courtiers, "Find me a woman who consults ghosts, so that I can go to her and inquire through her." And his courtiers told him that there was a woman in Endor who consulted ghosts. So disguised himself, he put on different clothes and set out with two men. They came to the woman by night, and he said, "Please divine for me by a ghost. Bring up for me the one I shall name to you." But the woman answered him, you know what Saul has done, how he has banned the use of ghosts and familiar spirits in the land. So why are you laying a trap for me to get me killed?" Saul swore to her by our Father in heaven, "As our Father in heaven lives, you won't get into trouble over this." At that, the woman asked, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" He answered, "Bring up Shemuel for me." Then the woman recognized Shemuel, and she shrieked loudly and said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." The king answered her, "Don't be afraid. What do you see?" And the woman said to Saul, "I see a divine being coming up from the earth." "What does he look like?" he asked her. "It is an old man coming up," she said, "and he is wrapped in a robe." Then Saul knew that it was Shemuel, and he bowed low in homage with his face to the ground. Shemuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me and brought me up?" And Saul answered, "I am in great trouble. The Philistines are attacking me, and Elohim has turned away from me. He no longer answers me either by prophets or in dreams." You see, that's how our Father answers you, prophets or in dreams. "So I have called you to tell me what I am to do." Shemuel said, "Why do you ask me, seeing that our Father in heaven has turned away from you and has become your adversary? Our Father in heaven has done for himself as he foretold through me. Our Father in heaven has torn the kingship out of your hands and has given it to your fellow to David, because you did not obey our Father in heaven and did not execute his wrath upon the Amalekites. That is why our Father in heaven has done this to you today. Further, our Father in heaven will deliver the Israelites who are with you into the hands of the Philistines. Tomorrow your sons and you will be with me. And our Father in heaven will also deliver the Israelite forces into the hands of the Philistines." At once Saul flung himself prone on the ground, terrified by Shemuel's words. Besides, there was no strength in him, for he had not eaten anything all day and all night. The woman went up to Saul, and seeing how greatly disturbed he was, she said to him, "Your handmaid listened to you. I took my life in my hands and heeded the request you made of me. So now you listen to me. Let me set before you a bit of food. Eat, and then you will have the strength to go on your way." He refused, saying, "I will not eat." But when his courtiers, as well as the woman, urged him, he listened to them. He got up from the ground and sat on the bed. The woman had a stall-fed calf in the house. She hastily slaughtered it and took flour and kneaded it and baked some unleavened cakes. She set this before Saul and his courtiers, and they ate. Then they rose and left the same night. The Philistines mustered all the forces at effect, while Israel was encamping at the spring. In Yisrael, the Philistine masters came marching, each with his units of hundreds and of thousands, and David and his men came marching last. With Achish, the Philistine officers asked, "Who are these Hebrews?" "Why, that's David, the servant of King Saul of Israel." Achish answered the Philistine officers, "He has been with me for a year or more, and I have found no fault in him for the day he defected until now." But the Philistine officers were angry with him. And the Philistine officers said to him, Send a man back, let him go back to the place you assign him. He shall not march down with us to the battle, or else he may become our adversary in battle. For with what could that fellow appease his master, if not with the heads of these men? Remember, he is the Dawid of whom they sang as they danced. Saul has slain his thousands, Dawid his tens of thousands. Achish summoned Dawid and said to him, As our Father in heaven lives, you are an honest man, and I would like to have you serve in my forces. For I have found no fault with you from this day. You joined me until now, but you are not acceptable to the other masters. So go back in peace, and do nothing to displease the Philistine masters. Dawid, however, said to Achish, But what have I done? What fault have you found in your servant from the day I appeared before you to this day, that I should not go and fight against the enemies of my master? The king Achish replied to Dawid, I know you are as acceptable to me as an angel of Elohim, but the Philistine officers have decided that you must not march out with us to the battle. So rise early in the morning, you and your master's servants who came with you. Rise early in the morning and leave as soon as it is light. Accordingly, Dawid and his men rose early in the morning to leave to return to the land of the Philistines, while the Philistines marched up to Jezreel. By the time Dawid and his men arrived in Ziklag on the third day, the Amalekites had made a raid into the Negev, and against Ziklag. They had stormed Ziklag and burned it down. They had taken the woman and the captive, low-born and high-born alike. They did not kill any, but carried them off and went their way. When Dawid and his men came to the town and found it burned down, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive, Dawid and the troops with him broke into tears until they had no strength left for weeping. Dawid's two wives had been taken captive, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, wife of Nabal from Carmel. Dawid was in great danger, for the troops threatened to stone him, for the troops were embittered on account of their sons and daughters. But Dawid saw strength in our Father in heaven, his Elohim. Dawid said to the priest Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, Bring the ephod up to me. When Abiathar brought up the ephod to Dawid, Dawid inquired of our Father in heaven, Shall I pursue those raiders? Will I overtake them? And he answered him, Pursue, for you shall overtake and you shall rescue. So Dawid and the 600 men with him set out, and they came to the Wadi Besor, where a halt was made by those who were to be left behind. Dawid continued the pursuit with 400 men. 200 men had halted to feint to cross the Wadi Besor, and they came upon a Mizraim, an open country, and brought him to Dawid. They gave him food to eat and water to drink. He was also given a piece of pressed fig cake and 2 cakes of raisin. He ate and regained his strength, for he had eaten no food and drunk the water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then Dawid asked him, To whom do you belong, and where are you from? I am a Mizraim boy, he answered, the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I fell ill 3 days ago. We had raided the Negev of the Cherethites and the Negev of Yehuda and the Negev of Caleb. We also burned down Ziklag. And Dawid said to him, Can you lead me down to that band? He replied, Swear to me by Elohim that you will not kill me or deliver me into my master's hands, and I will lead you down to that band. So he led him down, and there they were, scattered all over the ground, eating and drinking and making merry because of all the vast spoil they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Yehuda. Dawid attacked them from before dawn until the evening of the next day. None of them escaped, except 400 young men who mounted camels and got away. David rescued everything that the Amalekites had taken. Dawid also rescued his 2 wives. Nothing of theirs was missing, young or old, sons or daughters, spoiled, or anything else that had been carried off. Dawid recovered everything. Dawid took all the flocks and herds, which the troops drove ahead of the other livestock, and they declared, This is Dawid's spoil. When Dawid reached the 200 men who were to feint to follow Dawid and who had been left at the Wadi Besor, they came out to welcome Dawid and the troops with him. Dawid came forward with the troops and greeted them. But all the mean and churlish fellows among the men who had accompanied Dawid spoke up, Since they did not accompany us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we seized, except that each may take his wife and children and go. Dawid, however, spoke up, You must not do that. My brothers, in view of what our Father in heaven has granted us, guarding us and delivering into our hands the band that attacked us, how could anyone agree with you in this matter? The share of those who remain with the baggage shall be the same as the share of those who go down to battle. They shall share alike. So from that day on, it was made a fixed rule for Israel, continuing to the present day. When Dawid reached Ziklag, he sent some of the spoil to the elders of Yehuda and to his friends, saying, "This is a present for you from our spoil of the enemies of our Father in heaven." He sent the spoil to the elders in Bethlehem, Ramoth in Negeb, and Yather, in Aroer, Sifmoth, in Eshtemoa, in Rakal, in the towns of the Yerahmeelites, and in the towns of the Kenites, in Hormah, Bor Ashan, and Atach, and to those in Hebron, all the places where David and his men had roamed. The Philistines attacked Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines, and many fell on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines pursued Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck down Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchi, Shua, sons of Saul. The battle raged around Saul, and some of the archers hit him, and he was severely wounded by the archers. Saul said to his arms bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through, so that the uncircumcised may not run me through and make sport of me." But his arms bearer in his great awe refused, whereupon Saul grasped the sword and fell upon it. When his arms bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his sword and died with him. Thus Saul and his 3 sons and his arms bearer, as well as all his men, died together on that day. And when the men of Israel on the other side of the valley and on the other side of the Jordan saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their towns and fled. The Philistines then came and occupied them. The next day the Philistines came to strip the slain, and they found Saul and his 3 sons lying on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped him of his armor, and they sent them throughout the land of the Philistines to spread the news in the temples of their idols. And among the people they placed his armor in the temple of Ashtaroth, and they impaled his body on the wall of Beth-shan. When the inhabitants of Yabesh Gilead heard about it, what the Philistines had done to Saul, all their stalwart men set out and marched all night. They removed the bodies of Saul and his sons from the wall of Beth-shan and came to Yabesh and burned them there. Then they took the bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Yabesh, and they fasted for 7 days. So may our Father, Messiah, Holy Spirit be with us. I pray that this was edifying for you. And Father willing, we will continue with 2 Samuel.